You're watching Ukraine Brief. It has been 1,366 days since Russia began its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Search and rescue operations in Ternopil continued through the night after a Russian Kh-101 cruise missile struck a residential building, gutting the structure from the 3rd to 9th floor. At least 26 people, including 3 children, were killed and about 100 injured, while 46 people have been rescued. Over 230 rescuers from across Ukraine are involved in the response. President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Thursday that 22 people remain missing. Another 9-story apartment building was also damaged during the strike, with nearby buildings and vehicles hit too. This video, recorded from police body cameras, shows the scene at the site of the tragedy. Yesterday, during a moment of silence, rescuers heard cries for help. Between the 5th and 6th floors, they discovered a man trapped under concrete debris, injured but alive. Rescuer Denis Karpenko described how 20-year-old Bogdan was given a second chance at life.
We shared a moment of silence and heard a voice from under the rubble calling for help. My colleagues and I quickly found where the voice was coming from and made contact with the victim and started digging up the ruins of the building. We kept in contact with him all the time because he was scared, screaming. I calmed him down, told him not to be scared, not to lose strength, because there is a lot of rubble above you and it needs to be removed. Be patient and wait. We will definitely save you.
The morning began for firefighters with a moment of silence to honor the victims of the devastating attack that inflicted such catastrophic damage. This strike was part of a massive wave of Russian attacks across Ukraine, during which Russia launched 476 drones and 48 missiles, also hitting energy and transport infrastructure in other parts of the western regions of the country. Ukraine has confirmed that Russian Kh-101 cruise missiles struck those apartment buildings in Ternopil. According to the Ukrainian Air Force, the missiles were fired from 6 Tu-95 MS bombers. Fragments of one of the cruise missiles have been found and identified. It was manufactured in the 4th quarter of 2025. In the midst of a major corruption scandal still rocking Ukraine's political landscape, reports have surfaced that the United States is negotiating a peace plan with Russia to end the war in Ukraine. According to news outlet Axios, senior U.S. officials led by President Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff and Russian officials led by envoy Kirill Dmitriev reportedly drafted a plan to end the war in Ukraine. Witkoff and Dmitriev met in Miami last month to discuss the plan. So what conditions does this plan specify that might bring about an end to the war? The proposal calls for allowing Russia to assume full de facto control of the Luhansk and Donetsk regions, even though Ukraine still controls roughly 15% of the territory, according to the Institute for the Study of War. The areas where Ukraine would withdraw from would become demilitarized zones, with Russia also being prohibited from stationing troops there. In the Kherson and Zaporizhia regions, the current front line would be largely frozen, with additional negotiations to follow. For its part, the United States would provide Ukraine with security guarantees. However, only if Ukraine agrees to limit the size of its military and arsenal of long-range weapons. Finally, the U.S. would recognize Crimea, Donetsk and Luhansk as lawfully belonging to Russia. The proposal has received support from Qatar and Turkey, both nations having engaged in peace talks with Ukraine in the past. Rustem Umerov, Zelensky's national security advisor, reportedly met with Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff and Qatari officials last weekend to discuss the proposal. However, the plan has been met with skepticism from President Zelensky, who was supposed to meet with Witkoff in Ankara yesterday to discuss the plan. However, the meeting was postponed to discuss the plan in a broader format, including with European countries. This stance has also been backed up by European politicians who demand that Europe and Ukraine be included in the negotiations. There's been a major development in the ongoing probe into the Nordstream pipeline blast, with the Ukrainian suspect now set for extradition. An Italian court has approved Germany's request to extradite Serhiy Kuznetsov, the Ukrainian man arrested in Bologna for alleged involvement in the 2022 Nordstream pipeline sabotage. Kuznetsov had his extradition delayed earlier due to procedural issues, but a court has now cleared his transfer. He is expected to be sent to Germany within days, where he faces charges of sabotage and related offenses that could result in up to 15 years in prison. The Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines were crippled by underwater explosions in September 2022, months after the beginning of the war in Ukraine. Ukraine's ombudsman emphasized that Kuznetsov, as a Ukrainian serviceman, remains protected under the international humanitarian law, and his rights will be defended throughout his transfer and trial in Germany. Ukraine and Russia have carried out a new exchange of the bodies of dead soldiers. On Thursday, Ukraine and Russia carried out another exchange of the bodies of fallen soldiers, with Ukraine receiving 1,000 bodies. According to Ukraine's coordination headquarters for the treatment of prisoners of war, law enforcement and forensic experts from the Ministry of Internal Affairs will soon conduct the necessary examinations and identify the repatriated soldiers. Russian state media reported that Moscow received 30 bodies in return. The operation was coordinated by Ukraine's Prisoner of War Center with support from the Red Cross and other security and defense agencies. A key Russian oil refinery has once again come under attack, with Ukrainian officials reporting damage to one of the country's largest energy facilities. Ukraine's defense forces say they carried out another overnight strike on Russia's Ryazan oil refinery, reporting a direct hit and a fire in its secondary oil processing units. Officials say the extent of the damage is still being assessed. The Ryazan facility is one of Russia's largest, capable of refining more than 17 million tons of crude a year and producing gasoline, diesel, jet fuel and other products that support the Russian military. And that's all the news from Ukraine for now. Thank you for watching and stay with us for more here on TVP World and tvpworld.com.